The following case describes how to design an inlay street in the InLab 4.0 software. I firstly specify the name of the dentist, patient, and technician, and then proceed with the administration step. I determine whether it is an individual or bridge restoration. We produce 3 inlays, and I click here on Individual Tooth Restoration, Inlay, Biogenerics. Biogenerics means I wish to produce the inlay with software generation. Biogeneric copy would, for example, be a wax-up. I then click on the teeth to be restored and select a milling unit and the appropriate material. In this case, Feldspathic Ceramics Polychromatic, and click on OK. Once the administration step has been concluded, I proceed to the next step, scanning. As part of scanning, I have scanned the preparation in the upper jaw, the opposing jaw in the lower jaw, and, in the buccal scan, the registration in the articulator in order to simulate the occlusion in the software. Once the scan has been completed, I click on Model and am then in buccal registration mode, in which I assign the upper and lower jaw to the software. I move my lower jaw, drag and drop, buccal scan on the lower jaw. The software calculates this automatically. I then move the upper jaw into the correct position and using drag and drop also reposition the buccal scan. Following registration, I can display my model contacts on the model with Analysis Tools, Model Contacts, and could also check in the articulator whether these contacts correspond with my 3D model. I then proceed with Model Axis setting. I perform mesial and distal alignment along all 3 axes. I confirm with OK and continue in the preparation margin mode. For this, I firstly trim my restoration model, should I not have a saw-cut model. If the wrong area is hidden, double-click on this and it will be displayed. Double-click to start, click once to fix the line, and double-click to end. I then click on Draw Preparation Margin. Double-click, click once to fix, double-click. If the preparation margin is not clearly visible, you have the option of switching between automatic and manual. The preparation line is drawn manually or on the intensity image to make the preparation more clearly visible against the gum. Click once to fix, click twice to end. Check the preparation line. Make any corrections, double-click to start, click once to fix, and double-click to end. I do the same with tooth 15. I click on the symbol and am now in 15. I skip the trim mode and draw the preparation line straight away. Click once to fix. Press the spacebar to draw in the manual mode. Press the spacebar again for the automatic mode. Spacebar for the manual mode, and switch back to automatic mode. Click twice to end. Determine the insertion axis. The insertion axis now shows all the undercuts. I can change these here in the crosshairs. I confirm with OK. The same applies to tooth 14. Draw the preparation margin, click twice, click once to fix, and click twice to end. Correct the preparation line. Determine the insertion axis. The insertion axis can again be changed via the crosshairs, and I confirm once more by pressing the OK button. Once this has been done for all 3 restorations, I then go to my parameter mode. For this, I click on Next. The spacer and the adhesive gap determine the space with respect to the preparation. Occlusal offset for the occlusal contact strengths, proximal contact strengths, occlusal contact strengths. The minimum wall thickness, both radially and occlusally, complies with the recommendations from the material manufacturer, and I leave a margin reinforcement of 10 to 20 microns, and confirm with OK, and as such, all parameters are applied for all 3 inlays. I am now given a first software-generated proposal. Tooth 16 is already highlighted white, i.e., the tooth is active. I can now move the tooth slightly toward mesial and correct my anatomy. Right-click, Circular tool. I firstly see the emergence profile. I keep the left button depressed and now move my onlay as far out as I require. I close my interproximal areas, create a slight contact in the central fissure, and check my cusps. For this, I take my Show Object tool to display my opposing jaw. I then deactivate the opposing jaw and check my contacts occlusally. We then change the anatomy again before checking our proximal surfaces. It is clear to see here that the minimum wall thickness has been undercut, i.e., material needs to be built up slightly here. I then go to Display Objects and Trim. You can see a slight proximal contact here. This is built up to become stronger and flatter. Large area for building up, and here is a small area for adjusting how strong the proximal contact is to be. The same is done mesially. Adjust the proximal contacts slightly. Next, I go to tooth 15. Here I have very strong occlusal contacts and slight occlusal rotation. I now go to rotate and reposition the anatomy to suit my needs. With right-click Anatomical Circular, I can now always build up the anatomy as I require. The minimum wall thickness is visible again here. It may be worthwhile to move the fissure slightly to prevent any conflict with the minimum wall thickness. Small area to possibly also build up fissures. Possibly make the contacts slightly less strong to avoid having to mill in the articulator later on. Build up the emergence profile somewhat. You can see here that the emergence profile is slightly more cervical, i.e., we will move it slightly toward cervical and then correct it in its entirety. In the next step, I check my proximal surfaces. For this, I click on Trim Model and again see very thin proximal surfaces. We increase the size of these a little. We do the same on the mesial side, making them thicker, and then we adjust minimally. I then shape tooth 14. The first proposal is already relatively good. I merely build up more material toward the preparation margin in order to prevent the risk of chipping. I then close the interdental spaces and build up a slight contact. I switch to the milling mode and can move the restoration in my block. Let's take the sprue location first, to avoid having to change my proximal surfaces. For this, I rotate it slightly, and using the positioning tool, move it in the block to render it either more translucent or more opaque. Accordingly, I move it either toward occlusal or cervical. In the last step, I activate milling.